Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our, what month is it? March 2021 Community Breakfast. My name is Karen King. I'm with the Office of New Haven Affairs. Our office hosts these breakfasts the first Thursday of every month during the academic year. We have a variety of different speakers and every month is very exciting. We're excited about this month's speaker as well. I have a few announcements before we get started. I am going to share my screen. And just because, as I have mentioned before, just because Yale the campus is closed down, does that mean things that are not happening? On Monday, and if you attended our Beinecke talk a few months ago, you were apprised of the Mondays at Beinecke program. That continues this Monday. Kojo Eshun, who is an author, a theorist and a filmmaker, is going to be speaking about his research with Richard Wright in the Gold Coast. A great topic, great writer and great speaker. That's happening this Monday at 4 p.m. I will put the link to the Zoom link in the chat after I get started. The university is still celebrating 50 years of coeducation at Yale undergrad. New Haven's own Connie Royster is going to be speaking on March 9th from noon to 1. It's a lunch and learn. And it's sponsored by the Yale African American Affinity Group. So I encourage you all to join. I will put this link in the description as well. The Peabody Museum is undergoing an amazing transformation that will take place over the next couple of years. But while they are undergoing construction and the build out and the expansion, they are offering online digital resources. So I encourage you to check out the Peabody page. They update lessons for you to engage in with your children or grandchildren at home that you can download. There are resources for teachers. And I just really encourage you to stay engaged with the Peabody Museum and check out the page often because they will add more exciting things as time goes on. The Yale Office of New Haven Affairs, which is my office, is managing the Yale Community for New Haven Fund along with a wonderful advisory committee. This fund was created back in April, almost a year ago. In response to the pandemic, and the university raised funds to support New Haven residents who've been negatively impacted by the pandemic. To date, the university has donated nearly $3 million to nearly 200 New Haven nonprofits who are supporting New Haven residents by providing basic needs such as PPE, food, helping people to keep their utilities on because they are unemployed or underemployed due to the pandemic. There's more information on this page. I'll put this link in the chat. I am asking that you not only check out the page to see all the wonderful organizations that are doing great work here in the city, but also help us spread the word because resources are still available for nonprofits, especially nonprofits who have not applied before. We're still trying to get the word out through word of mouth, especially, which is often the best kind. So please help us spread the word. I will put this resource in the chat box as well. On to our speaker. Alisa Scherban is a registered dietitian and diabetes educator. She's been providing nutrition counseling and education for the past 25 years and has spent the last 10 years at Yale. She enjoys helping people optimize their health and well-being through nutrition and lifestyle changes. Please welcome Alisa Scherban.
Thank you so much for having me. All right, I'm going to try to share my screen, hopefully successfully. So give me 1 second. Okay, just want to go to the. Okay, I think, does that look okay? Can you see that? Okay, great. So let me just minimize my visual screen here so I can see everything. Okay, so I am happy to present this topic today, Demystifying the Mediterranean Diet. I actually did a presentation on this over the past year, and as it's one of those dietary approaches that most people have heard of, but not everyone is so sure how to apply it to their life, or whether they're maybe even following parts of it already. So, the purpose here is just to maybe share some of the pieces of this diet that that have been found to be beneficial, and see how you can apply this to your own life, kind of individualize it for you. Okay, so I hope to answer these few questions here. What is the Mediterranean diet? What are the health benefits? And how can you align your cultural eating style and traditions with the Mediterranean diet? So the purpose is not to force a specific way of eating on you just because it's healthy, but to look at it and say, what are the pieces that match how I, my culture traditions, and how can I make it my own? Okay, so if you did a Google search, I did one, and this is what I found were some of the headlines. So you may be familiar with some of these things. You might find Mediterranean diet slows cognitive impairment, study says. Mediterranean diet best for lowering LDL cholesterol. Mediterranean diet can significantly reduce risk of heart attack and stroke. Following a Mediterranean diet could prevent older people from becoming frail, and so on and so on. There's so many different headlines you might find. But what does the research really say? So the Mediterranean diet is the most well-researched dietary approach. So, that's pretty significant. But it is something that is very specific to a certain population. So, but let's just take a minute to look at some of the benefits that have been found. So there's been tons and tons of studies. Many of them were observational, but one in particular that I like to highlight was the PREDIMED study, and they followed 8,000 people over 8 years, and they found quite a number of health benefits. So I'm just going to highlight some of the primary benefits that have been found through research. So it's been found to decrease the risk of some forms of cancer. It's more effective than a low-fat diet for weight loss in overweight and obese individuals. It protects against cognitive decline by protecting the small blood vessels in the brain, and there's been found to be a 40% lower risk of developing Alzheimer's. It may improve eye health, including decreasing the risk of macular degeneration, and it decreases the risk of type 2 diabetes. One study in particular showed a reduction of 52%. It can help manage blood pressure, and it can reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease by as much as 30 to 60%. So lots of benefits here. So, kind of encourages us to look further at it and say, I think this is worth our attention. And, that's probably why the US News and World Report comes out every year with their best diet of 20, of each year. So for the last 4 years, the Mediterranean diet has taken the #1 spot. It's typically in competition with what's called the DASH diet, which you may have heard as well. The Mediterranean diet probably takes the top seat most often because it's a fairly flexible dietary approach. The DASH diet, which is really focused on hypertension or high blood pressure, is more specific and a little bit more rigid. So, but overall, they're both very healthy approaches. But in any event, it gets a lot of attention in the media, as you can say, but probably rightfully so, as there's lots and lots of good data to support following this approach. Okay, so I just wanted to highlight the areas that we're talking about with the Mediterranean diet. So when you ask someone what they think of as the Mediterranean diet, or where this comes from, most people think quickly to Greece or Italy. And I want to really kind of point out that it's not that limited. So there are over 20 countries bordering the Mediterranean Sea, from European countries in Northern Africa, the Middle East. So it's quite expansive, actually. So what's different is obviously all these countries have different cultural traditions and cultural foods. But what's very similar is, they're bordering the Mediterranean Sea, and they may have similar land and resources and foods that they apply in their own way. So I kind of like that in terms of how you might look at the Mediterranean diet and kind of translate it for yourself. So, so anyway, I just wanted to point that out, as that's usually a misconception, that it's really quite a number of countries that have a Mediterranean diet. Okay, so what is it? These are some kind of key characteristics about a Mediterranean diet. So I'm going to start at the top and go clockwise. So it's a dietary pattern. So like I mentioned before, it's kind of an approach to eating that's not rigid. It's more fluid. It's it's really an approach that consists of kind of pieces of a diet, not very rigid portions and structure. So, and I'll explain more about that in a little bit. It's a plant-based diet. So plant-based diets have gotten a lot of attention over the last year or so. And many people think that means that they are all vegetarian diets. And that's not really what a plant-based diet necessarily is. That think of a plant-centric or plant-focused. So you can still be following a plant-based diet and consume some amounts of animal products. Okay, it's rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and lean proteins. It's limited in saturated fats, sodium, and added sugars. It's linked to high cultural, social, and economic value. Food is prepared in moderate portions, avoiding waste. Food's typically locally produced, and it's fresh. So when you think of kind of our Western approach to eating, you can look at these key characteristics and say, well, we're kind of quite far away from some of these things. Many of us, what I see in the last 25 years is many people struggle to consume a plant-based diet, right? It having vegetables and fruits and whole grains be the center of our diet can be challenging. It takes effort. So, I think that's a good piece to look at, is like, okay, here's some proof that we really need to move to a more plant-based diet. And when your diet is rich in fruits and vegetables and whole grains, those foods tend to be limited in some of the things that are not so great for us, like the saturated fats, sodium, and added sugar. So and as far as the preparation of foods, obviously we've moved to a more kind of quick access cooking style, food prep style, right? We want things that are quick and easy now, but the Mediterranean diet really focused on kind of taking time to prepare meals with family. So it would be great to get back to some of that. And maybe that's one benefit of the pandemic, as many people were cooking more. But, so I think these things are good to point out to understand what kind of work we need to do to get closer to this. So here is the Mediterranean diet pyramid, or one version of it. And this is helpful just to show you what proportions of foods are consumed and in what frequency. So if you look at the base here, you're going to see that fruits and vegetables are at the base. So that is the most plentiful piece of this diet. And then you're going to also see in that part of the base is olive oil, which many people know that olive oil is one of the key features of the Mediterranean diet. If you move up the pyramid, the next level is going to be coming from grains, potatoes, legumes, which are also consumed every day. And most of the grains in a Mediterranean diet are whole grain. And then legumes, seeds, nuts, at least a couple times a week are consumed. And then moving up to the next level, you have seafood. So that's not surprisingly a central piece of this diet, as you saw that all those countries bordered the Mediterranean Sea. So they all had access. So seafood is consumed 2 to 3 times a week. Wild caught seafood, which is not always accessible, but it tends to have a little more nutritional value, is favored. So, that's something that also could be beneficial. So moving up to the next level, we have poultry, eggs, and dairy. So poultry and eggs 2 to 3 times a week. So not necessarily even every day. Dairy could be 1 to 2 times each day, but 1 to 2 times a day. But that, again, is not something that's like a central piece of the diet. So, and then at the top you have, that's where red meat and sweets would be, as those, and any processed foods, because they're consumed in much really smaller amounts. So that kind of gives you a general idea of what we're looking at in terms of proportions of foods. Okay, so when we look at the Mediterranean diet on the left, and then we compare that to our Western, or our SAD, standard, which stands for Standard American Diet, we can see quite a bit of differences. And, you know, obviously I was trying to kind of make a point here. Not everyone's diet looks like the diet to the right. I certainly, you know, don't want everyone to feel like that's how I'm thinking everybody eats. But in general, there is really a lot of emphasis on, you know, overly prepared foods that are really high in saturated fats. And we also tend to rely on a lot of liquid calories, and that is really contributes a lot to health issues. Whereas if you looked at, you know, that traditional Mediterranean diet on the left, you're seeing, you know, a lot more variety with colors and grains and fruits and vegetables. So you can see that there's a lot more opportunity for getting more nutritional value out of your food. Okay, let me move on here. So what would, you know, what's a Mediterranean lifestyle? And this is just a visual of maybe some pieces of what that might look like. So people might be cooking at home with their family. They might be out doing activity. They're eating together at a table, spending time eating a meal, drinking water, you know, keeping themselves hydrated. So those are some of the lifestyle pieces that also kind of are part of this Mediterranean diet way. Whereas maybe we look at our current state of how we approach eating, a lot of eating out, clearly, you know, and then, you know, a lot of reliance on quick sweetened beverages, a lot of screen time, and of course, you know, this is bottom line on the left has become a real issue over the last year for a lot of people I work with, is like not spending time with a meal. They're trying to really focus on maybe even working, and getting the food is like a secondary thing. So they may be eating while they're doing their work, or, you know, multitasking while eating, instead of sitting there with your, you know, family or friends and sharing a meal. So those are some of the issues that have evolved with our lifestyle surrounding food. Okay, so a Mediterranean diet, as I mentioned, is a plant-based diet. And so what's so great about plants? They're high in fiber. They have plenty of vitamins, minerals, healthy fats, phytochemicals, and they're low glycemic index, meaning they have little impact on your blood sugar level. And what they're low in is they're low in calories, they're low in saturated fats, they're low in sodium. So there's some of the reasons why, and I'm going to kind of highlight some of those specifically. So in terms of vegetables, that is probably the most important piece of this diet, and that's probably where people struggle the most. And the goal is to get at least 3 servings or 3 cups, which is essentially, if you've closed your fist, that's about a cup of food. So 3 fists of vegetables per day. So you might think about that. How am I getting that already? Am I nowhere near that? You know, some people do a good job of that on a regular basis, and some people really have a hard time. And the key thing here is you want to choose a variety of colors, and you want to put your attention on eating more dark green leafy vegetables. A lot of people pick the same like 3 vegetables constantly, and they circulate those, and they don't really expand outside of that. So there's a lot of benefit to exploring different, a variety of vegetables, because each color has different, you know, different nutrients called phytochemicals that will supply a health benefit. So that's really key. And then the greens, I wanted to kind of specifically talk about the variety there, because there's been, you know, plenty of information about how they are beneficial for us. One specifically, the CDC prevention study calculated nutrient density for about 50 fruits and vegetables, and 17 of the top 20 were leafy greens. So they just are powerhouses. They're jam-packed with good nutrition. So when I talk about greens, I'm not just thinking the most common one is spinach. And to be honest, that's one of my less favorite ones because spinach is not as easy for your body to absorb the nutrients from. So definitely continue to eat spinach, but highlight a variety of other greens. If you've heard of bok choy, collard greens, kale, kohlrabi, mustard greens, turnip greens, arugula, Swiss chard, beet greens, there are so many varieties, but a lot of times in the, in the grocery store, they get um, ignored, right? We stick with some of the other kind of common ones like broccoli or cauliflower or zucchini or, some of those others, which are all good for you, but don't come close to the nutrient benefits. So you're going to get tons of calcium. You're going to get really great iron. You're going to get zinc, potassium, magnesium, vitamin K, folate. They're anti-inflammatory. There's just so many benefits there. So some people who are not used to eating greens get a little bit stuck with preparation. But there's many ways you can incorporate them. Not everybody wants to be having a smoothie, but that's become a popular way for people to incorporate some of the plant foods into their diet, which is great. So greens actually go pretty, they're pretty stealth in a smoothie. You can't really notice that they're there. So if you're not a big fan, that's a great way to start yourself out. Adding them to sandwiches, even adding some of these variety of greens to even a salad so that you're not just sticking with, let's say, a lettuce, you're getting some more greens in there as well. Adding them to soups or stews, instead of maybe like lining your plate with a starch like rice, lining it with greens to start with, and then putting your other food on top of it. Adding it to stir fry, adding to sauces, or adding it to an omelet. There's lots of ways you can incorporate them, but the benefit is huge, and the variety of greens, there are quite a number of them out there. So exploring those would be a great idea. Okay, so fruits, the goal here is to get at least 2 servings or 2 cups of fruit a day. And again, same as vegetables, you want to choose a variety of colors so you get all those different phytochemicals in. Berries happen to be highlighted as one of the most nutrient dense fruits. So incorporating berries on a daily basis is a great idea. No, of course, this time of year, they're not so great in the grocery store, right? They're not in season, but frozen berries are a great option. So typically frozen fruits and vegetables are excellent options to get you more variety, because when fruits and vegetables are harvested, they're frozen very soon after. So those nutrients are really locked in. And, then they're accessible any time of year. Typically, I recommend, I think later on I even have a slide on it, but to stay with seasonal produce. And that is a great idea. But, like I said, then we have the other side of things is the benefit comes from having a varied diet and varied intake of these. So if you can rely more on some frozen options, I think that's an excellent idea. So fresh, frozen are great options. Canned, if you do canned fruits, looking for those that are canned in juice is also acceptable. As far as canned vegetables, they can be higher in sodium, but you can also, rinse those so that it's still better to get some than none, right? So any way that you can get them. And I mentioned this already, trying to choose seasonal produce. Okay. So how does a Mediterranean diet support a healthy weight? So this, I think, is a really good visual to show that how that might help. So if you look at this, this is a stomach. I don't know if that's easy to spot, but so you can see if your diet's very high in fat, it really fills very small amount of your stomach, and then so then you have cheese, meats, so there's really not as much satiety or volume there in your diet. But as you get to more of the whole grains, potatoes, beans, you have more satiety, and then you could see that fruits and veggies just have so much volume, so that's a real positive there. And so for all of that volume, the calorie density is quite low, so that's one of the benefits there. Okay, so I wanted to highlight the the phytochemicals a little further. So those are the plant pigments on each of the fruits and vegetables. So you can see here, there's fruits that span the entire rainbow, all different colors, and each color has a unique benefit. And we don't even know all of the specific phytochemicals that are present in fruits and vegetables. They've isolated many, and we know a lot about many of them, but there's so many that we haven't identified. So that's where it really helps to get, your food sources of nutrition versus, let's say, in a capsule form, like a vitamin. If you wanted to take a multivitamin, fine, but to say that you're covered and you're getting all the health benefits is not accurate, because again, we know there's so many more benefits to fruits and vegetables than we've even uncovered at this point. So they provide these phytochemicals provide color, aroma, flavor. The chemicals have antioxidants, they're anti-inflammatory, and they have hormone-like actions in our body. So the bottom line is really try to eat the rainbow. Okay, talking a little bit about whole grains, which is another key piece of the Mediterranean diet. You want to choose whole grains often. And here's a little bit of a, explanation of why. You can see that the whole grain on the left has all these pieces that we want to get all the nutrition. So we have the bran, the endosperm, and the germ. And the bran has the fiber, but it also has B vitamins and minerals in there. So, and then the germ is where you're going to get more B vitamins, some vitamin E, other phytochemicals, and healthy fats. So if we strip that away, we're missing out. And many people are very used to having like a more refined grain taste. So they may be, not as, that may not taste as good to them in right away, but it's the kind of thing that over time you get used to and you can appreciate more whole grain foods. So key thing here is really try to expand your whole grains. When choosing breads or pastas, look for that word whole in the ingredient list. Just the word wheat doesn't give you the full picture, and trying to choose the least processed options. And a lot of times you'll see this label, the whole grain label on a particular food. And what your goal is to try to eat 48 grams or more of whole grains daily. So that's what you might see on the label. Okay, so I just wanted to highlight the variety of whole grains that are out there that, many of these are very traditional whole grains that you can explore. So and I don't know if anyone's ever tried something like amaranth, but it's out there and it's available, and it's a wonderful grain that's high in protein. Barley, buckwheat, bulgur, corn most of us know of. Farro is an ancient wheat grain from the Mediterranean. Fonioke, freekeh, millet, oats, quinoa, rice, rye, sorghum, teff, triticale, wheat, wild rice. You can see there's a lot of whole grains here that you may not even have ever heard of. But one little piece of advice is that there's one particular brand that sells most of these. It's called Bob's Red Mill, that I find you can find in any grocery store. So they're pretty accessible, but you also can find some of these online really easily. So it might be worth, kind of testing out and seeing how you might like some additional, alternative whole grains. Okay, so another piece of that Mediterranean diet is wine. Now, I like to highlight this for a couple of reasons, to kind of point out what a portion size actually is, because many of us are prone to having large glasses of wine and maybe have more than we need. But it really is an optional thing, because the phytochemicals in wine, which are resveratrol and flavonoids, can also be found in the fruit itself, or even in 100% grape juice. So, that piece of the Mediterranean diet you can translate to fit for yourself. But a portion size of wine is 5 ounces for a day for women, and no more than 10 ounces of wine per day for younger men. So, and a 5-ounce glass of wine is actually quite small compared to what we're used to seeing. So just keep that in mind. But I think incorporating something with this nutrient, whether it's the wine or the grapes themselves, is health beneficial. Okay, fish and seafood. Eating seafood at least 2 times per week is recommended. All types are beneficial. Specifically, those that have omega-3 fats are especially heart healthy, like salmon, tuna, herring, sardines. Shellfish is also a great choice, including mussels, oysters, clams, and they have similar benefits. I just want to see how I'm doing on time. Okay, so a lot of people that I work with have some challenges with accessing seafood and planning for it, and especially with the pandemic, if people are not in the store shopping, it can be harder. But frozen fish is a great option, and even canned fishes. So these are some selections you might find in the store. And I was actually really encouraging people, if you haven't tried sardines, they are one of the best, most sustainable seafoods, that is lowest in mercury, that is totally accessible, that and very budget friendly, and they are a great option. So so even incorporating that in some way, whether you make like fish cakes out of it or like traditionally, I think the way people eat sardines is even there's a traditional pasta dish with sardines, or putting that on toast or a slice of bread, things like that. But there's a lot of ways you can utilize that. But again, there's a wide range of seafood, and relying on frozen options is absolutely fine. And these are some of the symbols you might see on frozen or canned seafood that indicate that they are more sustainable. Okay. Legumes, beans, pulses. So that's another really important piece. So you want to aim for at least twice a week. And the legumes are a huge staple in the Mediterranean diet. There are thousands of varieties. They're rich in fiber, specifically soluble fiber, which is fantastic for cholesterol. And they are a great source of plant protein. So I just wanted to highlight, kind of break down what legumes cover. So legumes include soybeans, peanuts, like fresh peas, fresh beans, and then there's pulses, which are your dry beans, dry peas, chickpeas, and lentils. So there's a wide variety, and all of them have benefits. And then, there's lots of applications for including beans. And, you can use canned beans. Of course, if someone's watching sodium, I'll encourage them to get a lower sodium version, or really rinse the beans very, very well. And that reduces the sodium by pretty substantially. But of course, cooked beans are a great economical option as well, because, one bag of dry beans is $, and it makes a ton. And it's generally healthier to have cooked dry beans that you cook, because they're not in a can, and then they are also not going to have the sodium content, so that's beneficial as well. And then people who are cooking them from scratch tend to digest them a little bit easier, so and you can rinse them a little bit more, so that's one other benefit. So again, in the traditional Mediterranean diet, they may be found on bruschetta or in a pasta dish, or maybe hummus, or in a salad or a soup. But, lots of cultures have beans, and utilizing more of those is a great idea. Okay, so moving on to nuts and seeds. So you want to choose at least 3 ounces of nuts and seeds a week. So an ounce of nuts is a handful. So, just even adding a snack of nuts each day would be a great way to incorporate it. But traditionally, they've been ground into sauces, sprinkled on salads, used in a lot of different ways in cooking the meals. But whatever way you can see fitting those in is a great idea. And the good thing is they're portable, they're compact, right? And they're very satiating, because they have a high fat content, but it's a heart healthy fat. And they also have fiber. So that combination really is satiating and sustains you for a long time. So you want to also, key thing here is avoiding like candied nuts or honey roasted, oil roasted. Typically, if you get roasted nuts, they've been roasted in a more inflammatory oil. Whereas if you get raw nuts, they have not been affected by other oils. You want to just maintain the oils that are in the nut to get the benefits of that. Okay, so nuts and seeds, you can see, again, a wide variety of options out there, from, peanuts to almonds to walnuts. You see cashews here, Brazil nuts, you see sunflower seeds, there's pumpkin seeds, there's flax seeds, chia seeds, hemp parts. There's so many different options out there. So again, kind of like I mentioned with the vegetables, trying to get as wide a variety as you can, you'll get more nutritional benefits. Okay, just to talk a little bit about heart healthy oils in a Mediterranean diet. Obviously, we know emphasizing olive oil is the key feature of the Mediterranean diet. There's also another cooking oil that I like called avocado oil, which is very healthy as well. And then there's polyunsaturated fats that are emphasized, that are rich in those omega-3 fats, which are in that cold water fish like salmon, or in flax seeds or walnuts. And then what is not so present in a Mediterranean diet and much more present in the Western or SAD diet are these processed oils that are, corn oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, soybean, vegetable oil. Those are much more inflammatory. And so we really want to reduce or move those out and replace them with those Mediterranean oils that are popular. And here's a little visual of one of the reasons why olive oil is so healthy for us. The yellow bar represents what's called monounsaturated fats, and that's what's heart healthy. So you can see how rich olive oil is in the monounsaturated fat and how much lower it is in the saturated fat. So if you started at the top, you see, well, those are so high in saturated fat, and that's not as heart healthy, or can work against us in terms of our heart health. So we want to really emphasize the monounsaturated fats, and olive oil is very, very high in that. And there's other reasons that olive oil is so healthy, and that's primarily because of its polyphenol content. So it's a compound that's present in olives that is then present in the extra virgin olive oil. So when you go to a grocery store and you're looking at olive oils, there's probably about 30 brands of olive oil. So it can be quite overwhelming. So I thought I would give you a few tips as far as that goes. But in terms of the difference, extra virgin olive oil means it was cold pressed or minimally processed. But then if you look at something like light olive oil, which you might find in the grocery store, that has been processed many more times. And so some people might use the light olive oil in cooking, but it doesn't have nearly the health benefits that the extra virgin has, because as you process it again and again, you're losing those polyphenols. And that's one of the compounds that really helps increase its health benefit. So as oil ages, or if it's exposed to heat, light, or oxygen, that polyphenol content can decrease. So just to kind of highlight some of the ways we can maintain that polyphenol content or get the most out of the olive oil that we are using. One of the ways, we can't always tell when we're buying it, but if we have olive oil and we want to know if it's still good, it should smell and taste fresh. It usually has a fairly strong smell. If it does, that means it's got more polyphenols in it. And typically it should have a bitterness or a spiciness to it. And that's sort of an indicator of those antioxidants that it has. So one of the things to look for on an olive oil label is see if it has a harvest date. That means it tells you when they've harvested it and when they have, kind of bottled it. And after that point, you're losing polyphenols little by little. So that's one key thing to look for: choosing a good container, dark glass or tin, so light does not impact it. Looking for a quality seal. So some of those seals on the left you might see on a bottle of olive oil. And that is an indicator that it's a good quality, and you want to use it up. So you don't want to buy it in huge bulk amounts, because you may not be able to use that up in a short time frame. But within 3 to 6 months, it should be the maximum, but ideally more like 6 weeks would be by an amount that you can use in about 6 weeks. Okay, so red or processed meats, you want to limit red meat to about once a week. I know that's not easy for everybody, so wherever you're at, maybe cutting back a little bit and changing the way you think about meat. It doesn't have to take center stage. It really can be added on to a meal as a garnish or, a portion of the meal, but not the focus. And 3 ounces or less is really a small amount. So if you looked at the palm of your hand, that's essentially about 3 ounces. So again, we can just cut back on our portion size first, even besides outside of thinking about the frequency. Okay, and dairy foods, like I said, are part of the Mediterranean diet, and there's some traditional dairy foods that you might find in Mediterranean culture. So Greek yogurt has become more popular, which is a strained yogurt, and traditional yogurt. Those are pretty center stage. Kefir is one of the world's oldest fermented dairy products. I'm a big fan of that because there's a lot of probiotics in it. Labneh is a creamy, soft cheese. Creme fraiche is France's version of a fermented dairy. Mascarpone is an Italian cream cheese like dairy product. So there's so much variety. So you could experiment with some of those options because they are available in many grocery stores now. So just kind of keep that on your radar. I want to make sure I finish in time here. So you want to also keep, piece of the Mediterranean diet is enjoying your meal. So you want to include variety, color, texture, flavor, and that really adds to that overall enjoyment. So it's just not just what you're eating, but it's the overall meal experience that is really key. And then enjoying your food also has a lot to do with the flavor. So there's a lot of use of herbs and spices. And the additional benefit of, besides flavor, is there are also sources of those polyphenols. So you're getting those plant chemicals even in the spices. And the good thing is those herbs and spices can replace salt in your food. And garlic is pretty center stage in a Mediterranean diet, and there's a lot of health benefits to garlic as well. Storing herbs, I know I find that it can be frustrating if you take herbs home from the grocery store and they go bad in like one day. So one thing you can do is clip the bottom of them, put them in a jar or a cup, and cover them with a plastic bag, and that will maintain them for about a week or so. So then you can add them to your food. One other idea is to put them in olive oil and freeze portions, and then you can just throw that in a pan or the soup or whatever. So there's lots of ways you can kind of keep those herbs, fresh herbs, accessible. Mediterranean sauces, another way that they add flavor to meals that also has health benefits. So these are some traditional sauces: tzatziki, aioli, yogurt tahini, pesto, sofrito. So those are kind of different sauces from different countries that have a lot of similar ingredients that provide that flavor and health benefit. And many of these are available in the grocery store. I know I tend to kind of keep stock of pesto and sofrito. I always keep those on hand and throw them into beans or meals or on a sandwich. So those are really, nice ways to kind of give a meal some flavor. And then, really kind of thinking about the approach to meal planning. You want to try to shop local. This is a visual of that I found of City Seed Market, which hopefully many of you access, which I'm a huge fan of. But local farmers markets, sometimes you can find a CSA, which is a farm share, and get access to some of the fresh produce on a weekly basis. And then, when you are shopping, trying to shop the perimeter of the grocery store where more of the whole foods are and less of the processed foods are. Trying to limit food waste. Even planting a garden can be a great way to kind of put some emphasis on produce. And then where do you begin? Beginning with small changes, maybe it's including some leafy greens or reducing your intake of red meat. Just beginning with something that's meaningful for you and that, it will work. You don't need to, no one really benefits from trying to shift their entire diet overnight. It's just not sustainable. So we want to look for sustainable changes that will improve our health over the long haul. And if a few resources that I find helpful, there's a website called Med Instead of Meds that has tons of great videos and cooking tips. And I'm a big fan also of Old Ways, which has a variety of resources on traditional diets, not just the Mediterranean diet. So you might find there's, you know, some other guidance as well on some of the other wonderful traditional diets that are out there. And I think that's all I have. Let me stop that. And now if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you. That's lots of great information.
Okay.
I'll put those 2 links in the chat as well.
Okay.
Ms. Shaw, I think I saw your hand up. Would you like to go first?
Well, I guess I really have 2 questions. One is I'm hearing a lot about gut diets. And I want to know how that compares with the Mediterranean, since I have a book on the gut diet too.
Yes, that's a great question. Yes, so the Mediterranean diet has been found to promote gut health. And the reason is it's a plant-based diet. So a plant-based diet helps support your gut microbiome, the balance of bacteria in your gut. It feeds the good bacteria, so it strengthens it. So a Mediterranean diet is a wonderful way to support your gut health.
Okay, so I don't have to change anything.
No.
Now, here's a comment that I have. You advocate, you know, cooking with extra virgin olive oil, but I tend to use that when things have been cooked, and you know, but because you know I may want to saute something, I'm not going to use extra virgin olive oil. But I've been using canola or grapeseed or peanut oil. But those are all things I guess I shouldn't be using anymore.
Well, what you can do, and in the smoke point has a lot to do with how well it works for certain temperatures. And you're right, extra virgin has, because it's been less processed, has a little bit of a lower smoke point. So avocado oil is a fantastic, very high monounsaturated fat that works up to 500 degrees is the smoke point. So that's a great one to use, and is, you know, compared to grapeseed, which is more polyunsaturated. So there's mono, poly, and saturated. So you want to get more mono. And so avocado would be a great option. Peanut oil has a fair amount of monounsaturated oil in it. So that could still work, but it's still fairly processed, and canola is fairly processed. So you'll get a little bit more health benefit from the avocado oil if you want to give that a try. But you could keep a variety. So don't feel like you have to be stuck with one type of oil. I think just looking at the balance of the options that you have.
Okay, great. Thank you.
There's a question, well, actually 2 questions in the chat from one person. Are Ezekiel breads good, and doesn't fruit have a lot of sugar?
Yeah, Ezekiel breads are fantastic. That's a brand of bread, if anyone's not familiar, that's typically found in your freezer. It's it's sprouted. So they sprout the grain before they make the flour. So it's lower impact on your blood sugar and has more kind of nutrient benefit there. Not everybody likes it because it's a little bit plain, because it doesn't have any added sugar in it. So definitely worth a try to see if you like that. So I'm a big fan of that. Fruits, although fruits have sugar in them, they also contain fiber. So you really, you know, and if you looked at the recommendations for vegetables compared to fruits, you see that, you know, the benefit or the emphasis should be placed on vegetables over fruits. But having at least 2 to 3 servings of fruit a day is absolutely recommended.
And one more chat question. What about coconut water in your diet?
Oh, coconut water. Yeah. So coconut water is absolutely fine. It's it's similar to, it's great for hydration because it has electrolytes in it, actually. So you can actually absolutely include that.
Any other questions? You can unmute yourself and ask.
Okay, I'll hog it. Okay, coconut water is fine, but what about coconut oil? I do have some recipes that that tell you to use coconut oil, and I get nervous.
Right, right. So if you, on that chart I showed you with the colors, you could see, if I brought it back up again, coconut oil is primarily saturated fat. So and I mean, there is a difference in the saturated fats that come from plants compared to animals. However, I wouldn't use it, I wouldn't emphasize it in your diet. I would use it sparingly, you know, here and there where it's called for. But as far as your day-to-day oil that you want to rely on, I would use the olive oil. But sometimes, like, you know, there might be a recipe that it doesn't fit for. So, so using that in small amounts is fine.
Okay, great, thank you.
What about shrimp, scallops, lobster?
Great idea. So they're very lean seafood. And so even though, you know, a lot of people have concerns about cholesterol in their diet, but over the last, let's say 5 or so, maybe 5 to 10 years, the emphasis on dietary cholesterol has really decreased. So we're not really concerned about that. We're looking more at saturated fat in our diet, and they do not have saturated fat because they basically have no fat content at all, those seafood options. So yeah, those are great options.
Can you talk a bit about diet soda? It's a question in the chat.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you know, there's a little bit of research out there that suggested that sugar substitutes may somehow impact your blood sugar level in some way. It's really not very clear. And then there is other, you know, questionable, though the sugar substitute typically in diet soda is aspartame. There really isn't any other major negative that has been found. But I mean, I would imagine that in general, you know, if the majority of your diet contains water, and then you have some of that in your diet, I don't think there's a major negative. But if some people will rely on that as their primary source of hydration, and I think, you know, that's not a great idea.
Can you talk a little bit more about dessert and craving, sweet tooth? And I know you mentioned creme fraiche and mascarpone, but what about things like chocolate, or, you know, what do you recommend as a somewhat healthy dessert, or how often is it okay to splurge?
So, you know, obviously, if you look back at that pyramid I showed, sweets are really minimized. As in the Mediterranean diet, they tend to rely mostly on fruits as a sweet. But of course, you know, we don't only want fruit when we're looking for a dessert. So, but one specific sweet that has a health benefit is dark chocolate. So incorporating dark chocolate, incorporating cocoa powder into desserts, that actually is a source of fiber, iron, you know, the health benefits as well. So you actually get some of those polyphenols in dark chocolate as well. So, you know, you can incorporate that for a sweet. But I think just, you know, if the majority of your day is on track, having a portion of a sweet should be able to fit in. You know, it shouldn't take over. But I mean, again, that food enjoyment shouldn't be lost. That's really important. So.
And what about along those lines, honey or maple syrup
Yeah. So maple syrup is definitely a great option, although very expensive. So it's not always fitting for everybody. So honey and maple syrup, at least both have some nutritional benefit compared to, let's say, table sugar, not having any. So I think using that in moderation is reasonable to add a little bit of sweetness to something.
Other questions? I see some inquiring minds. Someone in the chat said they're ready to retire in Italy.
Me too, right now.
And another person commented, I think it's just figuring out the recipes. They're so different from what we're used to.
Right. And with that, I really want to emphasize that you don't have to necessarily start cooking Mediterranean dishes, but just glean from the key core principles and look at your own diet and what you like, and see how you can adapt what you eat to that. I don't like to force, you know, a one way of eating on any person. I think we really can look at it the other way. So don't feel like you have to, you know, eat certain dishes to be healthy.
Are there benefits to wheat germ?
Yeah, so wheat germ, as I kind of pointed out on the whole grain slide, that's where you're going to get your vitamin E and your B vitamins. So it can just give you another boost of that by adding it. So absolutely.
Well, I think, unless there's one more question, I think we're going to wrap it up. Alisa, I really appreciate you joining us. I mean, I know it's March, but I think it's a great time of year, especially for some of us who have made some New Year's resolutions, and by now they've kind of like gone out the window quite a bit. Having this to recharge and kind of reset and actually share this great information is wonderful. So thank you so much for joining us. And I put those links in the chat for you all to continue to do some research on your own. And I'm sure you can look up Alisa at Yale Health if you have questions and want to reach out. Especially.
Absolutely. Feel free.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you next month.
Take care.
Bye-bye.